welcome for our second conversation, Linda. And, you know, we're talking about the world of theatre and people being engaged in that. And often it's a kind of a take and forgive. And if you live in a city place, you have access to theatre. And I grew up in a village. I don't think I ever, in England at one time, I don't think I ever went to theatre until I was maybe 15 or 16. Just wasn't done. So did you have those kind of experiences growing up, or were you a kind of a city person, or grew up in a little village? Or?
Well, no, I started my life in Sydney. So yeah, a city person living in the suburbs, you know, and I'm from a quite a large family, an extended family. And then when I was about 12, 13, my father took a job in Townsville. So our whole family, including the pianola, packed up and moved to Townsville from Sydney. And it was a very different life for someone coming from, you know, one of the capital cities. And I have to say, I actually loved it. Part of the reason was probably we had our first ever swimming pool in the backyard, so that was pretty good. But that really opened my eyes and my mind to the fact that there's a lot of different experiences around the country. And then, you know, later in life, working back in Sydney and working for major performing arts companies, and really realising that what we had access to in the city, not everybody else around the country was getting that. And thus, you know, my experience I mentioned in our previous conversation of going to see Circa at the Entertainment Centre in Mackay, it's now being in a regional centre where everything's not there all the time. If someone's coming through town, then I want to go. And
interesting.
And often so does the rest of the town. The Queensland Ballet came up and it was sold out. And it was incredible because it was such a mixed audience. But, you know, so yeah, there's a real difference between growing up in a major city and growing up in a regional centre.
I think where I'm going with that kind of question is, so we have things that societies always have things they're worried about, you know, and one of the things which, and it's nothing really new about the time, it's disengaged kids. On the back end of COVID, of course, everybody's worried about, well, the kids aren't engaging with school or they're not learning how they used to learn. Do you have any views on this idea of disengaged kids? I mean, whether it's cities or rural areas, and the role of theatre or the arts?
No, very much so. Well, I'm involved in 2 research projects at the moment. One of them is a national study looking at arts learning for primary age children. And it's very much looking at what arts learning happened online during COVID and what things helped the children to connect with each other and connect with their teachers. Because what we're hoping to find through this study are examples of really great practice that can help kids and their families reconnect with school, because there's still quite a problem. The other thing we found in the literature is there's a massive increase in school refusal. And that's an international phenomenon. And it's young people, children, primary school age and secondary school, for various reasons, are nervous, uncomfortable, anxious about going back to school. And then the other thing that we're finding from teachers is that, you know, during the COVID period, things went out the window, such as routine, turn taking. And so some children are going back to school and the teachers are finding there's all of these basic social interaction skills that need to be relearned.
Interesting. And how does this connect with the arts?
Well, being an arts person, of course, I guess you could say I'm biased, but the evidence is coming through that it was the arts activities, the adaptability of the teachers teaching these activities online that was getting the kids to connect. And one thing that has just come through in the data that we're looking at is that actually, because of the online situation and COVID, the students were willing to take longer and the teacher was able to spend longer once they found an activity that the kids were engaged with. And so there was this development of a longer period of learning and deeper learning that was happening inside these arts activities.
Do you have an example? Give me an example.
So one of the things that we've noticed, this is looking at some of the data that's coming in about music activities, was finding found sound sources just around your house. And then one of the descriptions from one of the teachers is that they would do djembe drumming with the children as class groups. They taught the whole of the primary school, 900 children.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So, because we asked them how many children they taught during the online period, 900. And so, the kids didn't have the djembes. So it was find something at home, find a bucket. And then had them all doing these rhythms and developing things together and separately and sharing with each other, possibly irritating the family initially, but then in some cases, and we found this from the parents' responses, that they were taking part and doing it with the children. So, and then there were other found sound sources, like finding things out in the garden, taking a device and going and recording sounds in the garden, and then coming back and creating a story to go with the sounds that you'd heard, and then recording that or doing it live through a Zoom type platform to share it with classmates.
It makes me think we have this giant discussion about the world of schooling and the world outside of schooling. It sounds like you're finding out there's a way of crossing those borders in a way, because you were bringing the school world into the garden or into the house or into a found object. I mean, so what will you do with this research when you what's the plan?
The plan, so this is part of the Emerging Priorities program that's funded through the federal Department of Education, and the goal is to develop some examples of practice of things that you could do as online learning with primary school children, and we'll put those up on the Create Institute, the Research Institute here at CQU, on that website, and they'll be open, free for teachers to use. So that's really the goal. We have some researchers from other universities who are specialists in each of the art forms who've come on board, and so they're looking at the data, not having been involved in the actual survey distribution. So we've got these fresh eyes. And they're all people who are very familiar with the Australian curriculum for the arts. So looking at it through the lenses of that. And what we're looking at particularly is where we can find evidence for the personal social capability. So there are 7 general capabilities within the Australian curriculum. And these are things that I call, or what they used to be the hidden curriculum, because we never assessed them. But to me, they're all the things you learn at school that are what you actually do in the rest of your life.
One more example. I'm thinking I should know what the 7 are. Give me an example.
Now I've got to remember them all. But it was literacy, numeracy, technology, personal and social capability, and now if I'm going to forget the other 2, because I'm so focused on that one.
So you can see that what I'm hearing here is that the whole point of drama and the arts is it's about applying things. And then on another of your projects, which is that TikTok research with people. Tell me about that project.
Yeah, this is it's a great example of applied theatre. It came about initially through a pilot project that we did, and Dr Luke Price from the law faculty had a call from the Durrumbul Youth Network here in Rockhampton, saying, look, is there any way you can help us? We want to help the young people who use our centre, who are often stopped in the street by police. They don't know what to do. The tendency is to run away. So what Luke and I did was we worked collaboratively with the theatre students who I teach, and then the law students who he teaches, and they were sharing ideas about how to approach this. The law students were looking up, well, what is the law? And then the theatre students were interpreting that in scenarios. And we made some very rough clips, just the kids filming it on their mobiles, and sent the link to Durrumbul, and they showed it to some of the young people. And we got some amazing feedback. They found some of it absolutely hilarious. But it was great. And so from that, we were then able to develop the project, and we've just done this much bigger project, No Dramas, which is where we've worked with young people, and we brought in some actors and a young First Nations videographer. and it was exploring issues that are or topics of concern to young people, and that included again interactions with police, but particularly some health issues, so vaping, substance abuse, and another one was cyberbullying. So the actors had workshops with different groups of young people, and then came in here to the green screen studio and made these short videos. So they're called, you know, in formal speak, short form videos, and they're really for TikTok. And so what we've done now is we've made a No Dramas TikTok account, and they're all sitting on there. And I suspect that the next thing that this leads to is the attention span of the young person. So the first TikTok videos that we made were 20 seconds to a minute long.
Okay, go
And
on.
when we took them back to the young people who'd been involved in the workshops and showed them to them, they said, oh yeah, it's nice, but it's too long. And I watched one person who had handed the iPad to, watching them, and I timed it. 7 seconds was the amount of time that person was giving to each clip. And if you watch young people on their devices with TikTok, 7 seconds, you can't get a lot of information across to a person in 7 seconds.
So so did you then have to cut them shorter, or did you leave them at the length they were, or?
We kept the ones that were there, and then we made a few more that were quite short. But the other thing that, you know, we found working through it was young people are actually really savvy. There are a whole lot of layers of structure and meaning in a TikTok. You know, they use juxtaposition, they use transference of ideas, they use familiar dialect. There's a whole range of things, and then there are things that are known as trends, and these trends change very quickly. So the clips that we made in November, when we show them to young people again in February, they said, oh, those trends are out of date.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible. And I think what I take from this is, of course, that there was a time when everybody would talk about TED Talks. People would go and buy books on TED Talks, and that was kind of like the pinnacle was I did a TED Talk, you know. And I look at this and I say, kids are kind of saying, well, we never were part of that. We don't consider that relevant. And it shows the way we move through things. But I do wonder if the skill sets are still being developed. And I think that's what you're saying as well. There's still a lot of skills being developed there.
There are a lot of skills being developed there. And in fact, we found this with a couple of young people. And this is where I was saying they were savvy. Young people for whom literacy might be a problem are quite adept at using the voice recognition on their device. So instead of typing things in to find something, they just speak it into the phone. And of course, if there's a literacy concern and it's coming back as a video, so it's an audio visual, they're still getting that information without having to read it. And then during the course of all of this, I found some other research that said our brains actually process visual image 60,000 times faster than they process words. So a mathematician might, you know, be able to work that out and go, well, if it's 7 seconds and 60,000 times, how many minutes of actual transference is that? I don't know. But there's definitely a lot going on.
And then I'll end the conversation and say thank you. And I'm reminded of the great chess masters in the world, and they can just look at a chessboard and they know what to move. So I think your point holds valid for a lot of young people in our ability as grown-ups to understand where they are. Thank you. Fascinating. Thank you, Linda.
Thank you.